3 years ago, I talked about a little Rockstar game from 2003 called Manhunt. It had more of an effect on me than I thought it would. I'm gonna be honest, I did not expect Manhunt to stick with me as much as it did, but I'd say my opinion on the game has only improved since that original video I made. I have gone back to Manhunt multiple times in these 3 years, and I've tried so many random games in hopes of finding something that captures that same vibe, and then I realized if I want the same vibe, there's another Manhunt game. Okay, so not only does Manhunt just not feel like the type of game to get a sequel, it did, and it feels like people barely even talk about it, and when they do, it gets a little, let's just say, overshadowed. I said last time Manhunt as a game tends to get overlooked in favor of only talking about the game's controversy. Yeah, that all goes doubly for Manhunt 2. While the first game occasionally gets discussed when talking about Rockstar or just the PS2 in general, I only see Manhunt 2 talked about divorced from its controversy by Manhunt fans. What I heard about the game was all over the place too. People said it was a worthy sequel, a big step down, a fine game but a bad Manhunt sequel. I didn't know what to expect picking this thing up. First though, I know I say the controversy on these games hogs the spotlight, but like, we gotta talk about this, man. If the first game made a splash, the second game crashed straight into an iceberg, killing hundreds. I had quite a fun time reading through some of the articles when this game was due for release. Child advocates are urging parents not to buy Manhunt 2. I wonder why.
We're going to lure them into the open and then chop them up.
One of my favorites was this Variety article where the writer was pissed the game wasn't even more explicit, the executions were censored, and didn't like the game gives you moral justification to kill people. This is like the bizarro version of every other article I read on this game. It's kind of awesome. Of course, with the constant graphic murder happening, this game was going to be sat with an adults-only rating, which is simultaneously the most and least interesting ESRB rating to have. It's interesting for the games that had to censor themselves to prevent getting it and grabbing the M rating instead. It's lame for games that kept the AO rating, because they're mostly just sex simulators. Prior to release, Manhunt 2 got censored in a variety of ways, most notably with this filter over every execution that makes it look like a blood vessel and my brain exploded. Despite all the censorship though, it still wasn't enough for people, and even if it managed to get itself into M-rated territory, people still wanted the game flat out banned, which actually happened in multiple countries. For some countries, the only version banned was the uncensored PC version. For others, make sure you don't leave Manhunt 2 in your pocket when you enter, otherwise it's shoot on sight. Over here in the land of the free, they wanted this game buried in the desert like fucking E.T. because they thought Manhunt was basically a serial killer training tape. So where did a game so sadistic end up releasing? It didn't even get an Xbox version. This is also the most controversial console port out of all of them. I don't know why, but the fact Manhunt 2 is on Wii is really funny to me, especially since the first game missed out on the last Nintendo console. I couldn't imagine the first game getting a GameCube port, but this exists somehow. They even made wrist straps for the remote. How quaint. I think the Wii version might be the best one on console, at least that's the consensus I came to, and as such I played through all of it on Wii for this video, but when I got to the end, I just couldn't shake that damn elephant in the room of the PC version. The PC version is the only one to not catch a bad case of censorship, and as such it is both the game's original vision and the only one saddled with an AO rating. So this is the one banned in multiple countries. But I have it. Streaming this game is banned on Twitch. It's a little hard to find since the PC version is mostly just preserved without having a real home, and I definitely found myself on a few websites that looked like they were going to give my computer an STD while I was trying to find a download. Because of the censorship and the trickle effect that had across the whole game, there are some changes between it and the console versions that vary in severity. Namely, the ranking system at the end of stages needed to be cut so they could get an M, which... Okay, let me rant for a second. Genuinely, what is the problem with this game? Like, Manhunt was definitely not a golden child of a game by any means. It caused a notable stir, but not to this extent. All Manhunt 2 does is the same everything as the first game, but again, and I'd argue that, like I passed by before, this game does a better job at justifying you making people into pieces than the first game did. Most of the weapons you use in the first game for executions return in the second. You use them in generally the same way, and while there are new executions for guns, it basically amounts amounts to whacking a guy once and shooting, and popping a guy's head like a balloon was nothing new to games at this point. Hell, I'd argue with the more gratuitous, senseless violence, as well as stuff like Pigsy, the literal white supremacy gang, multiple innocents getting murdered for no reason, there's more objectionable content in the first game that wouldn't have been shocking if it garnered the response Manhunt 2 did, but for some reason all that ire is placed on what I consider to be the far tamer game. It's just so confusing. Anyway, suffice to say, due to it being the best looking version of the game and the least censored, most of what you'll be seeing is from the PC version. But the Wii version will crop up every now and then to show off differences, and cause it's how I did my first playthrough, so if you see me failing, dying, or generally being bad at video games, that probably happened on Wii. So, one last time, let's step into the world of Manhunt. The game begins at the Dixmoor Asylum, which really ought to have better security systems given the people being kept here and that one power outage is all it takes for every patient in here to start roaming free and killing the staff. Our protagonist for the evening is Danny. He's the guy currently doing the strangling. He isn't able to follow through though because he gets some horrible migraines. Aside from the fact he could really use some acetaminophen, he's also suffering from a bad case of amnesia, so let's hope this hospital cures that. The only companion Danny has here is Leo, who's a bit too excited to kill people but is still more mentally here than Danny is, as Leo does everything shy of leaving jerky on the floor to make sure Danny focuses on escaping. We're taught the Manhunt essentials: stay out of sight, get pissed on, find weapons off the floor, play with a guy who hung himself, do our first execution, and then throw up in-game and in real life. Aside from visually, executions also differ in function across versions. On PC and Wii, you physically perform actions to do your executions, both for initiation and during the cutscene. This is why the Wii version was so frowned upon, by the way. Moving your remote in sequence with the execution was seen as the most efficient way to make little Timmy into a murderer. Wow, I really feel like I'm disemboweling someone. I started getting a little tired of it by the midway point though. It feels like it really slows down the pace since it happens on every execution, and the motions aren't fun or interesting enough to be happening this regularly. What is interesting though, at least to me, is what happens if you don't follow through on the motions. Depending on what's happened in the execution already up to that point, enemies will either stay dead or walk it off. Like if you whack someone with a nightstick and give up, yeah, they're gonna run at you, but conversely, it doesn't matter if I follow through on the execution. The first move here is stabbing them with garden shears. I think he's done. The PC version gives you the option to do motions with the mouse or have none at all, and I opted for the latter. Having the execution play out uninterrupted makes stages feel so much less sluggish. Speaking of controls, the Wii version doesn't let you turn your camera independently from your character, and there were many times that led to me taking damage or getting killed when I don't entirely feel like it was my fault. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I feel like this is a much stronger opening level than the first games. The way it tutorializes stuff like hiding, doing executions, and combat is done in a much more fast-paced way. It doesn't stop you in your tracks to tell you how a thing works, then this even extends to what it teaches you about the new mechanics like moving bodies into shaded areas, which is forgotten about as quickly as it's introduced. If a returning player doesn't want to linger on it, they don't have to. It's very well done, because the slowness with which you go through Manhunt's first stage is one of the less appealing parts of doing repeated playthroughs. On top of that, Awakening generally feels more fleshed out than Born Again. There's a few puzzles, more enemies to deal with, you travel through multiple floors of the asylum, so progression feels more intricate, the level evolves as more patients escape and cause disarray. It feels like Manhunt 2 naturally continues in terms of complexity off the final levels in the first game, which made it very comfortable to jump into. We make our tactical garbage truck-based escape from the asylum, but no time to rest. Leo says we need to make our way to the house to grab something, with the truck coincidentally landing us in Danny's old neighborhood. We've also got to worry about these guys called The Project, who are responsible for us being in this mess and are patrolling the city looking for us. Now that we've got some more open area to deal with, we get introduced to one of Manhunt 2's best additions, environmental executions. If there's an object marked with a skull on the map, you can do an execution with it. When placing areas where you have weapons available to you, they get kinda sidelined, but when the arena is designed around them, even better if they're your only method of executing since you can do them without weapons, things get really fun. It fits really well into the game loop. Manhunt already makes you consider the space around you heavily in both games so you know where your safe spots are and where any potential danger is. This adds on to it, where now you can also use that spatial awareness to see if there's any special kills available. The game also rewards you for going out of your way to do them. Some of them automatically hide bodies, they only come in red so there's no charge up for full style points, and since they're more situational, you'll also have unique animations to see when you do them. It's one of those additions that makes me wish the first game had it as well, and I think that shows how good of an inclusion it is. This level is also where I first experience a new mechanic that I don't like, but also it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so when you're in a hiding spot, when a hunter checks where you're at, occasionally you'll get this short minigame where they look at you really hard and you gotta keep the little circle inside the big circle. On the Wii version, you gotta hold the remote straight, which is good because I guess I'm playing this while having a panic attack. On PC, the circle moves slightly, but it never gets intense enough to matter, really. I feel the same way about these as I do the interactive executions, in that they break the pace a lot, but these are way worse because they don't have a reason to exist. If you mess up, the hunter spots you, which, yeah, is bad, but the minigame is so easy that you're never in any danger, and I really wish you could turn these off as well. Why it doesn't matter that much is because this doesn't happen very consistently, or frequently for that matter. I swear by the halfway point on my PC playthrough, I stopped seeing these entirely. Semi-related to this, but here's a weird quirk about this game. The way I was recording the PC version makes the entire HUD and some visual effects completely absent. I don't know why it happens, and I didn't notice it until several levels in, but sometimes the stuff that gets removed makes parts unintentionally funny, like when Danny gets scared of broken TVs, or how the hiding minigame turns into a staring contest. Though, interestingly enough, this also meant removing the red filter from execution, so watching this back is the only way I could see them unobstructed without mods or anything. We eventually reach the house that looks like it got hit by a nuke, and we gotta search through the cupboards while being accosted by visions. I kept running past one and was here for way longer than I should have been, not my brightest moment. We find our medicine and need to get a syringe from the bathroom, but just as we make our way over, the project starts sweeping the area. Our last major mechanic for this level is drop-down executions, and I am using the word major extremely liberally here. If you're above an enemy, you can immediately kill them using a red execution, and beyond this tutorial, in my first playthrough, I genuinely never used it. In my PC playthrough, I definitely got a bit more crafty, as you will see. This started immediately as I used the negligent height of the stairs to immediately kill this guy, and I am not just shocked it worked, but also that the game let me do it in the first place. Once cleanup's done, we find our syringe that seemingly makes Danny come to, but inside his syringe box, Danny also finds a box of matches. He believes he left himself before this mess so he could remember something. This lands our duo at a shaggy place that's a strip club in the streets and a fetish/torture dungeon in the sheets. Leo isn't a fan, as according to him, the big thing at this place is project coercion and recruitment, which he seems to think is messed up, but hey, I don't kink shame mostly. Doesn't matter what Leo says though, Danny wants answers, so now it's a break-in. This level highlights a pretty big and annoying problem Manhunt 2 has relating to its weapons. In Manhunt 1, weapons all had these glowing auras to them. Not only did it instantly communicate what type of weapon you were picking up, it also helped them be more visible from far away and in dark areas. Manhunt 2 opts for removing the glow, and I kinda get why. They want to make it more immersive. Both these games have a real bad color palette, so having these vibrant greens, blues, reds, and yellows might feel out of place. But now, weapons can sometimes be way too hard to see. This is something I noticed as soon as the game began, but this is where it started actually hitting me. We break into this strip club, and there's a huge area with a bunch of guys to kill and whatnot, and after killing all the dudes, you end up at this door. This guy's smart and won't let me in because I'm me, so I need to hack off one of these people's heads, but the enemies only believe in using decorated bats for murder. So unless I feel like sawing with a broken wine glass, we might be here a while. So what am I looking for? I need an axe I didn't find for 20 real-life minutes. Now, why did this happen? Well, aside from the fact the game kept respawning the same enemy over and over, making me think he had the weapon I needed, so I kept wasting my time killing him repeatedly because I am Sisyphus reincarnated, it's because... look, the axe was in here. Say I'm bad at video games, I'm fine with that, this was not my fault. The indication that a weapon is grabbable is that it has this static effect over it, in a game where everything has static over it. So yeah, especially behind a reflective glass case, couldn't really see that. Even aside from that, there were times I ran straight past weapons, hell, even painkillers, because I straight up didn't see it. That never happened to me in the first game, and this happened to me a couple times in both playthroughs. I get some head, show it to the doorman, which somehow works, and we end up in this weird dungeon place that's actually pretty fun because all these cell rooms have different environmental executions. On PC, I'm not sure how, but I was even able to save this guy in the electric chair. I'm the good guy here! Aside from that, this level also gets a lot of use out of a new mechanic, that being reactive lights. They show up on walls, and if you run past, it turns a light on, and in rare cases they even cycle between being on or off. These also don't contribute much. There's usually enough hiding spots in the surrounding area that you don't really need to interact with them. Later in the game, when you get guns, you can even shoot the lights to permanently turn them off, but I don't even feel the need to do that. We get to the end of the dungeon, and we find this doctor lady who we've been chasing through here. I just forgot to mention that because the axe made me have a moment. She knows who we are, but seems very freaked out that we've been talking to Leo, so she decides to run out of there there after giving us a key to the nearby safe house, so that's our next destination. Red Light had probably the most memorable start to a level, at least on my PC playthrough. It starts with these two guys. I catch some aggro with them and manage to find a spot to hide. But then, once they divert their attention from me, they start beating up a random guy on the street, and I just won't stand for that. I'm the primary hero of this game, damn it, so I'm gonna save every pedestrian I can. I do an execution that was done as precisely as possible, and my friend here, he's seen better days. Me and the Red Hood engage in mind-blowing combat, but then something happens, and I am now stuck in a wall. After begging for a way out, I clip through it, fall for a while, and get teleported back to the sidewalk as a dead body. I have no clue what any of that was about, but it was a fun gimmick, so this is definitely an S-tier level. So aside from that event, Red Light introduces pedestrians to the mix. They're completely innocent, and you have no reason to kill them. But you know you can. They don't do much and don't change anything really. They're mainly for multiple endings, as in if you kill the pedestrians, you get what you deserve. So if you want the good ending, just ignore them. As you just saw, depending on the hunter you're going against, they will start attacking the randoms if they've got nothing better to do. And assuming you're not stupid like me, you can get free executions off enemies who are too busy beating a guy up. And if someone else kills an innocent, my conscience is clear, doesn't matter if I watched. Interestingly, I noticed a lot less civilians during my Wii playthrough than on PC. I figure most of them were removed because they don't have a reason to be there without the multiple ending shtick. I do think they add a lot to the atmosphere though. I definitely appreciate Manhunt 1's more desolate feel, but Manhunt 2 incorporating more average people gives a better look into the shitty living conditions these people have. Like, sure, I can roam the streets unattended, but that's because I was making a lab to carve people like pumpkins. Anyone else existing here is basically giving permission to the Siggy to mutilate them, which is pretty sad and something I'm happy this game sheds more light on. That's about all this level has going on though. The only other important thing that happens is Danny getting lured into a sex shop by the project, but there's like 4 people in here, so it gets cleared out with no trouble at all. We get to our safe house filled with pictures and newspaper clippings Danny left for himself to make sure he remembers who he is and what he did. Upon seeing a picture of his old friend Michael, this leads into one of a few flashback levels that I'm going to use as an opportunity to talk about Manhunt 2's biggest claim to fame. So, as you might have noticed by now, the story has had a much larger role than in the first game. In Manhunt 1, there were several stages where the setup was, here's a new area Starkweather wants you to kill people, go have fun. That's not to say story developments didn't happen, but in Manhunt 2 the plot is continually progressing with each scene, with the flashback levels being the embodiment of this. The development of our 2 main characters is so important that we need to see their history, getting understanding of them and their current struggles. The first game didn't really do much like this, and as such, Manhunt 2 focusing more on story doesn't land for some people, which might sound crazy, but I kinda get it. I'd argue Manhunt 1 being more reserved in its story lended to the type of atmosphere and direction it was trying to go for. It honed in on the bleak and depressing feel of being trapped in a city where being as cruel and violent as possible is a normal occurrence, death is around every corner, and you, as the main character, are part of the problem. Everything about it is oppressive, which I think centers the main conflict of the story on the environment around you, how easy it is for people to give in to brutality, how easily identifiable corruption is while also not being able to do anything to stop it. Sure, at the end of the day your main goal is to kill Starkweather, but neither his nor Cash's backstory is super important. Starkweather mainly acts as the driving force behind the story, and I do like how basically everything that Cash experiences leads right back to him, but what he causes, I'd argue, is more important than he is as a character. Manhunt 2 is more centralized on Danny and Leo's story and discovering the truths behind both of them. It's interesting in telling a more traditional story where some levels in the first game will end and go right to the next. Manhunt 2 has cutscenes opening and ending each stage, which seems like a departure from the first game, but I still think it falls in line well. Despite what it does differently, it still keeps those themes intact of corruption and oppressive atmosphere and the world being against you from the first game, but this time it's for more personal reasons centered on Danny and is all caused by the project, which gets you more invested in taking them down and more interested in knowing what their deal is. It has that same story flow as the first game, where the project's actions are more important than they are as an entity, but on the character side, Danny's conflict helps you get more invested in him as a character, whereas I couldn't really do that on the same level with Cash. I'd also say the themes of people giving into violence are more present here, as the project and Leo literally try to make Danny a more dangerous person than he initially was, and in a messed up way he ends up persevering because of it, but now I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Personally, I'm happy they took a new direction with Manhunt 2's story instead of just continuing off the first games. I feel like that one was bookended well and that Cash's story was wrapped up by that point. Manhunt 2 was able to keep the series' feel while doing its own thing. Similar but different is the best way I can describe both these games. This leads us into Best Friends, our first flashback level, taking place 6 years ago with Danny holding his former friend Michael at gunpoint telling him to remove something called the Pikmin Bridge. The fight gets interrupted by the project coming in to try and kill both of us, but Michael has the keys to our escape boat, so we gotta chase him down. Interestingly, all the flashback levels are played as Leo instead of Danny, which ties into the story in a cool way, but I'll save that for later. This level gave me some troubles, starting in this grinder room. I know I praise sections where you need to rely on the environmental executions, but this was a little painful. There's only 2 grinders to work with, and the room is so small that half the time when you think there's an opening, there's another guy watching whoever you're trying to kill. And if you get spotted, there's hardly enough room to lose whoever's chasing you. Next, we get introduced to everyone's favorite manhunt mechanic, shooting people in the head. I don't really know how to feel about the gunplay here. It was made better, but all the additions they try to make to it are not that good, so let's try to unpack all this. First off, traditional shooting has been changed slightly. I felt that in Manhunt 1, sometimes headshots just did increase damage instead of insta-killing people. But here the reticle changes and locks in on enemy heads to let you know that it's gonna one-shot, which makes aiming slightly easier and getting kills a lot more consistent. There's an argument to be made the instant lock-on might make things too easy, but being able to instantly handle anyone like this makes dealing with groups and shootouts with even weak guns much more feasible, so I'd say it's good on the whole. Next, guns can do executions now. On paper, this solves one of my major problems with the first game. The stealth was so much more fun than the gunplay, and I wish the game focused on that more, so now the guns having executions gives you the option in shootout sections to either blast your way through the crowd, or take the quieter approach. In practice, yeah, not really. A lot of parts where you're giving a gun expect you to make a liberal use of it, and as such, a lot of dark areas are in awkward places where it's hard to lure someone, kill them, and get out unscathed. Furthermore, as you progress through the game, some shootouts lack dark spots entirely, so you don't get much a chance to make use of it. The game also does a pretty bad job at incentivizing you to go for gun executions. Maybe something like getting better reward out of them than gunning someone down, but you are able to accumulate so much ammo in this game, sometimes having literal hundreds of bullets in your back pocket, that it's much easier and faster to just run and gun. The only other way of balancing this would be getting more style points out of doing the executions, but not only does shooting people barely impact your rank, this is a feature in only one version of the game that most people will not have played, and even considering the PC version, since your rank takes into account your time in a stage, it's in fact more beneficial to take the easy route. The first big shooting area is fine, and actually provides some good shaded spots in case you feel like trying to take advantage of the executions. To spoil things a bit, despite my grievances, I actually think on the whole Manhunt 2 handles shooting better than the first game, but we'll get there when we get there. You have this small fight with Michael that can't decide how hard it wants to be. Sometimes I stun lock him in the first 5 seconds and don't even give him a chance. Sometimes Mike remembers the flare gun can critical hit burning targets and suddenly I'm on fire. We kill him, grab our keys, and have a fun, chaotic run back to the escape boat with many people shooting at you and having a helicopter flying overhead to worry about. Back in present day, Danny is understandably mad Leo killed his best friend, and Leo responds by telling him the best way to hide from cops is to put on different clothes. The fuzz won't catch me now that I'm dressed like a Sunday golfer. This is the first level where things got a bit more difficult, probably because it focuses the most on shooting thus far. I don't remember if this was a thing originally, but I found out there's friendly fire in this game after one of the watchdogs blew his own buggy's head off just a few feet away from me. I also got the nasty surprise of the introduction of my beloved shotgun when I dropped into the stairwell and got absolutely annihilated. Somehow while running through condemned buildings it leads into an adult theater. I am not sure why this is down here. This has a giant shootout where the game was being really stingy on if it wanted to let me use theater seats as cover or not, and I ended up dying a lot here, which gave me a lot of time to think on adult theaters as a concept, which kept leading back to the question of why would I want to beat my meat at a public area surrounded by strangers. Also, not to be judgy, but for a theater populated by self-proclaimed sexual deviants, this is some pretty softcore shit. One of the people ain't even fully naked. Anyway, the level's already over. Might seem a bit abrupt, but Manhunt 2 is a bit more inconsistent with the level lengths. I feel like on the whole they're longer than in the first game, but randomly in between that there'll be a stage you can clear out in less than 8 minutes if you aren't dying. This is the perfect example of that because the next stage is like over twice the length of this one. Danny gets pissed off and decides to take charge, so we're again on the hunt for that doctor. Her name's Judy, by the way. Our search leads us into a brothel that's actually being run by the project. Gotta keep those business options open. I'm not sure if Danny knew she might be around here or not, because the way the cutscenes are framed, he says he's looking for Judy, then he walks in here, and tells the dude at the desk he's looking for her. If he did know the place is Project Territory, walking in and asking is kinda dumb. If he didn't know, it gives me the impression Danny's going around random buildings asking people like he just lost his dog. Also, never let it be said I don't follow instructions. The guy at the check-in desk said to wait right here, he goes to the back, calls Project dudes, and I'm still sitting here like a dunce waiting for my room key until they rung up on me. Where a lot of Manhunt levels are tough for giving you too much space, which creates a lot of area between hiding spots, this one's hard for being extremely narrow and closed in. You are given little to no space to work with, almost the entire place consists of hallways where getting spotted means nowhere to run. This makes the whole situation tense, because one wrong move means getting extremely creative to lose the several people now after you, but honestly it made for a fun challenge. That is until this room. You crawl out of this vent and immediately have to deal with two dudes and another one with a shotgun. As soon as you exit the vent, you are put directly in the open, so make sure you look both ways before crossing the road, otherwise you will find a hole where your chest should be. Even when you do manage to get out safely, you've only got this little square of shadow to work with, and if you slightly nudge someone, yup, that's death. Once you do take care of those three, the stage transitions into shooting, and hey, here's a shooting problem I haven't mentioned yet. So many of these shootout sections are either big hallways or just boxes. Aside from doing time in the first game that literally had a straight line you shot people on, I feel like it had more variety in how shootouts were arranged. Like, sure, this prevents the game's gun sections from becoming frustrating with enemy placement, but a lot of these parts feel the same. But I will give it credit if there's one thing I think the stage nails, it's the atmosphere, which is something I think this game generally does a good job with. This is one of my favorites though, the harsh, vibrant lighting contrasts the empty, almost abandoned feeling building, giving this liminal space quality to it. As you get deeper into where the project is running its operations, the lighting gets more sterile. What were halls consisting of warm colors becomes a maze of gray, almost jail cell-esque rooms. I think it's interesting comparing both games, where the first was so reserved in its palette that there's a single area I distinctly remember for being colorful. Meanwhile, the second is more free in its usage, which gives it a unique feel while still creating an uneasy environment. Again, very similar, but different. It's cool. We find Judy on the top of this building, but she doesn't seem to be in the talking mood, especially because she really doesn't like Leo. Just as we're about to get something out of her, the project shoots her, and this triggers Danny's PTSD. Initially, I didn't know why. It couldn't be because of the gun going off, because I shot people a couple times. The real reason is Danny getting reminded of an assassination that he took part in several years ago that acted as one of the main reasons for the project wanting to hunt him down. This scene stands out to me for doing something not many other Manhunt stages do, and that's taking advantage of verticality. The stage starts on this elevator lift where you're working your way through waves of enemies, and from there you're constantly jumping between different buildings with ladders and stairs that give you multiple elevations to tackle fights from, and you even alternate between going inside so you can approach the outside of the buildings from a different location to get somewhere else, back to inside. It has some nice variation. Speaking of jumping between buildings, I managed to fall off using the smallest gap possible because it isn't a Manhunt level if I don't find the stupidest way I can die in it. The extremely varied yet fun design is exactly what I would have wanted out of the gunplay in this game, but even then, it isn't perfect. The game hands you a sniper rifle as soon as the level starts, and it trivializes most sections because you can hang back before you enter the main area and pick everyone off so that progression becomes a non-issue. I'd really recommend playing this without sniping. It forces you to engage with the enemies a lot more, which I think is worth doing because you'll get the most out of very good level design. If they were going to give you the sniper off the bat, I wish they would have designed the level around it better because it feels like the free win button. I'd still say this is a standout stage for its variety and difficulty, but you're going to have to go out of your way to fully experience it. Most Wanted is where all hell breaks loose. Back in the present, we're public enemy number 1, and we've got all sorts of bounty hunters looking to make a quick buck off our head. We get corralled into this house, and one quick getaway later, we're now caught in one of the most inconvenient situations to be in. A small area, multiple hunters patrolling, and a helicopter flying above. These have been featured in a few scenes before this, but I want to discuss the helicopters now because this is where they become a real problem. This is the only main different enemy type Manhunt 2 introduces. They don't get alerted by sound, they're making plenty of it on their own, instead you gotta stay out of the way of their sweeping searchlight. This makes them very dangerous, since being in a hiding spot doesn't matter, which can force you into awkward situations when dealing with other enemies. Since they're flying, this also means they're exceptionally hard to lose, because you can't hit them with the fancy footwork to get away like you can with the rest of them. This is mainly a problem because of their most dangerous attribute. If you get spotted, the forecast will call for bullet showers very soon, so you won't get much of a chance to run away regardless. Even though they don't show up often, I really like how helicopters mix up how you approach stealth. They're so much more of a threat than anything else around you. You've got to switch to prioritizing getting out of their way as much as possible. This inadvertently acts as a buff to any enemy it's patrolling with. The main weakness of most enemies is that if you're hiding, you might as well not exist. So having one that can not only attack you in shadowed areas, but also force you out of them, giving other enemies the opportunity to pounce, makes for quite the interesting balance to maintain. After clearing the place out, we make our escape to the sewer tunnels and into another shooting section, and it's been in the background this entire time, but we gotta talk about it. Manhunt 2 loves having you shoot at people. A lot of my level rundowns have gone start stage, stealth around to execute the guy that has the gun, and then use that gun on everyone you encounter afterward. The original had a decent balance, I feel. There were only a few stages that were entirely shooting focused. Here, it's as much, if not more of a focus than the stealth. I associate Manhunt with the stealth gameplay. It's easily my favorite part of it, and after a few levels in, it feels completely shafted in favor of exercising your Second Amendment. I'll maintain that the gunplay is better in this game than in the first, but I still don't think that means it should be the primary focus. I wish there was more restraint, because as soon as guns get introduced, it's like the game can't help itself. This is gonna get really awkward when I talk about one of my favorite levels that heavily makes use of gunsing a little bit. I swear I'll have a good reason. After making our way out of the sewer, we end up running through this neighborhood. I had a bit of trouble here on PC, because there's this guy who really wants to hit me with a shovel, and he was giving me a crisis, because he seemed like an innocent, so I didn't think I could kill him, but does he stop being an innocent when he starts trying to kill me? Does this qualify as self-defense, or do I still have to ignore him for the good ending and can I get an answer quick please because he's beaking my ass? I ended up letting him live, just in case, which made things much harder for me. After experiencing the outside air for 5 seconds, we escape back into the sewers, and are we just gonna not worry about the guy that has the giant hole leading into the sewer system in his backyard? I wasted a lot of time here trying to get environmental execution on this guy and ended up blowing his back out anyway, which made me so mad I thought about setting myself on fire, which sent me into a flashback where I tried to steal some guy's gas. This here is one of the few pedestrians still in the Wii version, ain't he special? Since good ending stuff doesn't matter here, I did some fisticuffs with him, but he only aggroes on you if he sees you stealing his gas, so I took the sneakier option on PC. This stage, Ritual Cleansing, is one of the longer ones. I didn't jive with it much on my first playthrough, but when I came back around on my second one, it actually became one of my favorites. It does decide to start by disappointing me, though. It introduces this interesting mechanic where you can spill gas on the floor, creating environmental execution. Not only is this the only time you can do this, it is also really hard to take advantage of, as you can see me desperately trying to lure these two cops just so I can make an attempt. This is also where one of my favorite deaths in the whole playthrough happened. I need to lure this cop out of his shack over here by saying this pile of files on fire. On my first try, I do so, easily get the kill on him, and then I run inside and sound the alarm on myself. And before you ask, no, I don't know why, but it was funny, so it was worth it. I only have 2 major criticisms of this level. First, carrying gas around. It wasn't fun in the first game, it's not fun here, all it does is break the pace. Second, these gates. There's a ton of them, and I feel like the game slightly encourages you to open them all, because without doing so, you don't have a lot of space or shadows to work with, so if you want to have the best chance possible, you need to spend a decent amount of time opening them all, and it takes quite a bit of time, and don't expect to get a high ranking if you do this either. I actually recommend, if you're down for the challenge, to only open the gates you're required to. It'll make how you approach the final and hardest enemy wave more interesting. And you won't have to waste so much time doing this. Other than that, this scene is a standout. It's the first entirely stealth-focused level in a while and incorporates a lot of varying elevations, room sizes, and level geometry that makes each enemy encounter feel different. The level variance also allows for you to play it in different ways depending on what you're feeling like. For example, on Wii I took a very traditional approach in stealthing through the area, but I didn't take advantage of the extra openings and left them all closed, which ended up making everything much more difficult for me. On PC, despite opening all the doors, I didn't use them that much, and if you can believe it, I mainly killed people using drop-down executions. This is the only level I was able to apply them in a useful way, and it made quick work of everyone. I was out of sight in an area where most enemies wouldn't see me coming, and when I found my opening, I was rewarded with an easy red execution. It made me realize maybe the problem with these executions isn't so much the mechanic being useless, but that you don't have many opportunities to make use out of it. Once you clear the enemies out, you're able to use the gas to burn all of Danny and Leo's personal records records. I guess there ain't any backups to these because according to Leo, we're just one step away from freedom. Snap back to reality and we've tracked down Dr. Pickman, the head scientist for the project, and our objective here is surprisingly not murder. Instead, Leo says we need to get him alive. In this starting area, you need to kill a dude without having weapons around. On my first playthrough, I did things the hard way, but on my second go, I realized I can use bricks as bricks. I think this is the first time I've killed someone using a throwable. Origins is chill. It's how I remembered fall damage is a thing. Nothing that crazy happens on the gameplay end here. This is mainly where a lot of story stuff happens. First, this is where we learn of the Pickman Bridge, one of Dr. Pickman's experiments where a second personality could be implanted into someone's brain. Following that, some third party, like the Project for example, would be able to alternate which personality is dominant at the moment. A lot of people got experimented on for this, including animals. They killed Lois, but our two test subjects of the hour are Danny and Leo. Danny is a scientist for the Project, but other than that is a normal dude, has a family, and is generally anti-murder. Leo is the complete opposite of this. Leo really likes killing people, and the problem with that is he's really good at it. I don't know if it's explicitly stated, but I imagine the reason Danny and Leo were chosen for this is so the project can have its cake and eat it too. The ultimate killing machine that can be summoned at will under the guise of some guy. The problems arose when Pickman got desperate. The government was taking away their funding, and the project was set to shut down. So Pickman only had one last shot, and that was the experiment on Danny. Unfortunately, the Pickman Bridge wasn't ready yet, so it malfunctioned, and now both personalities can interact with each other. Now the project has an extremely volatile time bomb on their hands, and they need to make sure things go as smoothly as possible. They have a TV station, TVMK, that they incorporate subliminal messaging into so that Danny's able to stay in line. But because both personalities are sharing the same space, Leo's able to occasionally gain control of Danny and cause problems. This also goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the flashback levels. Why do you play as Leo in all of them? It's because Danny isn't the one in control here like he is in present day. There's some other allusions to this in the rest of the game too, the way Leo's always able to talk to you even if he doesn't seem to be around, the way other characters only ever refer to Leo without directly acknowledging him, even though the way the cutscenes are framed, he's right there, how Leo's always forced to go where Danny goes even if he thinks it's stupid. Granted, I picked up on all this pretty quick, and at the start of the game I figured Leo at the very least wasn't real, but it's still cool they're reserved about how they drop little hints before the big reveal. Matter of fact, I want to talk about our duo here, cause this is gonna be a controversial opinion, but I like them more than our two in the first game. Now, to be fair, Starkweather was a high bar to beat on his own. He's the perfect motivating factor, and some of his dialogue is insanely quotable. But I like how Danny and Leo actively bounce off each other and how the game spotlights their dynamic. Danny is completely opposed to everything that's happening, being generally scared, confused, and desperate for answers. This stands in contrast to Leo. He's a very smart psychopath and continually manipulating Danny, given to his violent urges, under the guise of getting back at the project. That's just his way of getting Danny on board though, because if you decide to go through with it, he's more than happy with you killing innocents. He doesn't care who it is, he just wants blood. It's a bit deeper than Starkweather's mid-stage banter in the first game that mostly amounted to taunting Cash, knowing that he couldn't do much to get out of this situation until the end of the game. Leo is more intentional about what he's saying, encouraging Danny to be the murderer he really isn't, because whenever he kills someone, that's Leo seeping in through the cracks, gaining more control over his mind. Leo's battle for control is what leads into the main conflict at the end of Origins, where we have Pickman kidnapped with Leo trying to threaten him into removing the Pickman Bridge so that he can have full control over Danny's body. Danny's kind of the unfortunate situation of trusting Leo because he's basically the only guide he has through this hell, and he doesn't find out how big a detriment Leo is to him until the very end of the game. That being said, he still does get a little bit of autonomy. A lot of the major plot developments happen because Danny ignores Leo and does what he thinks will get the most answers. There's a push and pull through the entire game between these two that I really enjoyed seeing unfold. Danny's trying to wrestle whatever control he can out of the situation while trying to get himself back to a home that he doesn't know doesn't exist anymore. All the while, he's getting unwillingly placed into the Manhunt experience, which makes him a very sympathetic character. Leo, meanwhile, I see as something of the ultimate Manhunt villain, at least from what we've gotten so far. When you get down to it, a lot of his characteristics reflect the worst of Cash and Starkweather, a manipulative, ruthless killer that manages to evade death at every turn, seeming unsuspecting while simultaneously holding all the cards. This part of the game is where Leo's manipulation becomes most blatant as he grows more desperate. In the middle of his confrontation with Pikmin, he starts rattling off this phrase that seems to do something that incapacitates Danny, which has actually worked into the stage in a cool way. He'll start saying it over the loudspeaker and you need to shoot them in time or else it's instant death. Leo kills Pikmin, which means they're basically out of luck and now our duo is at their lowest, scouring through the TV station's tapes for any sort of lead for actual weeks. Danny is slowly losing his mind and is ready to give up while Leo is putting in the least effort possible trying to pretend this is to help Danny and goading him to keep going, because if he doesn't, Leo's stuck here forever, which is the last thing he wants. The gang lands on a tape mentioning a Dr. White, and with nothing else to go off of, we've got to track her down. Now we get dropped into Broadcast Interrupted, probably my favorite stage in the game, which is ironic because it makes a lot of use out of the shooting. So, how does that happen? Well, it does something a lot of other shooting-centric stages don't, and that's mixing with the stealth gameplay in a very smart way. So you get to the usual shootouts, right? There's cover for you to take advantage of, some decent variety in how rooms are constructed, and making sure you don't get covered in holes is pretty challenging. A lot of shootouts you're just barely scraping by, you've really got to make the most out of the painkillers you're given. But, when played right, making good use out of your stealth can alleviate this. It finally gives the balance I was looking for. Killing enemies stealthily is hard, but the enemies also rain down an avalanche of bullets if you fight them head on. Even though it takes more finesse, on my second run where I opted to sneak around instead of tackling them head on, I died much less. The general level design is also interesting. The early shootouts play out like shooting galleries, but they continually expand until you've got enemies coming at you from all sorts of directions and even elevations. Despite stealth being a viable option here, shadowed spots are used sparingly. Instead, you need to rely more on using back routes to navigate behind enemies, which tests how good you are at routing while making things more risky, since you won't have many safe areas to run to if you're spotted. It gives the stage a very unique feel from the others and makes every room feel more claustrophobic as it forces you to constantly stay out of sight from enemies. To top it off with it taking place inside the project's TV studio, the setting is something the level can truly call its own, and makes it one of the most memorable in the series. The aesthetic is always changing. We get a small cameo from our little friend, and every death is accompanied by either a laugh track or the studio clapping, which is very funny considering one of Leo's lines when you kill someone throughout the game is, "What, do you want applause?" From here until the end of the game, we could have had an insanely good run of stellar stages, but Altered State is up next. When I say it like that, it makes it sound like it sucks. Nah, it's fine, just nothing very exciting. Starts on a low note though. After you clear out some enemies, you need a crowbar to enter this pipe to keep going. Can you even see where the crowbar is right now? My Wii playthrough makes me look like a dumbass. I ran around here for an embarrassingly long amount of time because I just walked straight past that thing. This was the worst instance of the weapon visibility issue easily. There's also something else I want to talk about. This game has a hard-on for the crowbar. I swear you use it so much more for opening locks than you did in the first game, and the few times I didn't is because I was shooting the locks off instead because it was faster. It's not that big of a deal, it was mostly funny to see so often, but since the crowbar is essentially a key and lock situation, why not at least mix it up with new weapons and stuff? They use wire cutters to make holes in fences a couple times, but whenever it was used they add like 2 more crowbar parts just in case. Other than that, there's not a ton memorable about this stage aside from the part where you shoot the rope holding a stack of hay to get into the barn, or this scarecrow perfectly placed on a window to fool me into thinking an enemy is there. This got me on both playthroughs, by the way. What I mainly remember it for is the end, where all the enemies run to this safe house and you've got to play it careful, otherwise the world's bullet population will be sent your way. Which is thankfully easy to do since you're given a crossbow with a sniper scope on it for some reason. There's one point where the enemies all claim they have me surrounded, but I just wait for the clown car to pile into this one staircase up to my room and watch the dominoes fall. It's kind of funny because in theory this level should be super hard, but the few things in your favor let you steamroll the whole endeavor. We find Dr. White at this place and she performs an execution on us. Finally, some poetic justice. Danny wakes up and whatever was in that syringe must have been good because Leo's nowhere to be seen. White gives the whole Pikmin bridge rundown to Danny, but while Pikmin wanted to fix the Leo problem by using as many guns as possible, White believes in a battle of the minds and entrusts Danny with helping her purge Leo from his body. This starts with Danny needing to remember the day everything went wrong for him, the start of the spiral, and the perfect event to show why Leo needs to be killed once and for all. Enter Domestic Disturbance, or as I know it, Hell on Earth. This is far and away the hardest level in the game. You are rarely given time or space to breathe, and sometimes it can be a bit of a mess, especially in terms of enemy placement, but god, that's why I love it. Manhunt 2 I generally consider to be much easier than the first game, so maybe I was hungry for a stage that relentlessly kicked me in the balls for fun, like a Mouth of Madness or Border Patrol. Which is fitting, because this stage also feels very Manhunt 1-y, mainly with the guns. Manhunt 2 is pretty consistent about giving you cover to work with when guns are in play, but the first game could be far less generous. And Domestic Disturbance is the only level from this game I can really think of that you don't have something to hide behind when a guy has a shotgun aimed at your head. This level is kinda split into 3 parts, starting with having to outmaneuver the police and open people's garages searching for wire cutters so you can escape further into the neighborhood. If you decide to be on the same playing field as the cops, it's tough, but you can hop around on the roofs of houses and get some awesome drop-down kills on people. Like this time, where it didn't work, so I hit him with the meanest overhead in Manhunt history. The second phase is a chase with a helicopter flying over you where you're constantly on death's doorstep. You always have to vault over fences, which gives the helicopter just enough time to tickle you, which I don't particularly think is my fault. Better be perceptive too, cause take too long and get damaged too much cause you didn't know where to go, and you won't have enough health to get through the mandatory vaults. The final part is where things get super difficult. The SWAT team shows up to clear you out, and if you thought dealing with hordes of enemies with nightsticks was bad, now they have shotguns. The best weapon in any video game with an asterisk. Shotguns aren't exactly known for their high rate of fire, so if you get run up on by a crowd, it doesn't matter if you're miraculously one-tapping every guy coming at you, you will get dropped. This is one of the few times where I did some gun executions, but that was mainly because there wasn't anything else around. You do get alleviated when you get to the street though. Get the gang in position, make sure nobody sees you, and watch the fireworks deal with half the threats. If you don't play smart, like I did a couple times, you will be almost instantly annihilated, which left me running around the entire neighborhood looking for healing, and I mean the entire neighborhood, cause man, they are stingy. The next main problem area is this pool. There's 4 enemies and you enter it by vaulting over a fence, which leaves you prone to getting spotted, and it's a large wide open space, meaning straying too far from your shadows is an invitation to get cooked. I didn't even engage with the pool space, instead I took the only logical solution and tightrope walked across the entire fence while making shots, and I guess on my last run through, the SWAT team wasn't expecting to get attacked by the greatest showman, so they completely froze up. Hey, thanks for the free style points, I guess. After evading the SWAT team and what's left of the police, we make it to Danny's house where White's intentions are made clear. This flashback is to show Danny that Leo took full control of him and murdered his wife, leading to the spiral he's found himself in, and kicking off the events of the game. Now, I'm gonna be honest, at first I didn't really like this level. Fights were so stacked against you, enemies were consistently loaded with shotguns by the halfway point and are places that you get ran down as soon as you're spotted, and I straight up hated this pool section. But after going back for another go, I really came around on it. While still super difficult, I feel like the odds being so not in your favor was intentional, and if you're patient and creative, you can definitely get the drop on everyone that comes your way. Manhunt definitely does have some choice levels that don't click until you fully understand them, and as such can be quite rough on the first playthrough. I know I've poked fun at it here, but the best example of that is Mouth of Madness from the first game. I completely ranted about it in that original video, but in the time I've replayed Manhunt since, I really came to appreciate what it brings to the table. Part of the reason why I came around on Domestic Disturbance, and really why I like a lot of the endgame stages of 2, is that they feel like event stages. Manhunt 1 had event levels in spades: Kill the Rabbit, Strap for Cash, Mouth of Madness, Press Coverage, Border Patrol, all classics, all extremely memorable, and all up to the ante in a new way. Manhunt 2 still has that, but it's not as spread throughout the game like the OG. I'd say things are pretty standard until you reach Most Wanted, where the game shifts into overdrive. After you clear the flashback, this is where you get one of 2 endings. Being a stupid idiot who kills pedestrians, and not even in an impressive way, throws you into the bad ending of release therapy. Alternatively, if you let the pedestrians live, and kill people as sadistically as possible, that makes you a little goody two-shoes and you're dropped into personality clash, and yeah, let's talk about that. So aside from the killing innocents thing, which is pretty obvious, the ending you're spat into is determined by your rank, which I find interesting because getting good ranks gets you the good ending. The good ending, where you free yourself from the extremely murderous Leo, is only obtained by being as gruesome and calculated as possible and killing everyone in your path. Alright, I know why it's like this, because if it was story accurate, you'd have to get the lowest ranks possible, which would be as funny as it would be annoying. annoying. It's just hard to ignore the gameplay to story disparity. Despite not killing anyone and performing generally good, I still got the bad ending first. I'm not sure how strict it is exactly, cause I averaged 3 and 4 stars, but I guess the few low outliers were enough to hold me back. Both stages take place in Danny's head. Here in Release Therapy, he and Dr. White decide to try and lock Leo away in the recesses of Danny's mind, which is immediately proven to be a stupid idea, as you can break out of here in less time than it takes for the pre-level cutscene to play. From here, the level is a giant shootout with tight rooms and halls filled with assault rifles and SMGs, with Leo having to confront his biggest enemy, the Eternal Light of God. All the hunters here have a habit of fading in and out of reality, I guess cause Danny's basically having a mental collapse, and sometimes that gives them just enough time to take me by surprise. As you can see, I was on death's doorstep for most of this level. It isn't anything intricate, but throw enough guys with guns at me and eventually I'm gonna drop. We make it to the final room that reminds me a lot of when you face off with Starkweather in Deliverance, not sure if there's any significance to that. But I just keep on unloading bullets in Danny until he stops moving, which takes a lot longer than you'd think. And he's donezo, with Leo celebrating by having the funniest crash out I've ever seen.
Fuck you, Danny. I won. Fuck you, Pikmin. Fuck you, White. Fuck the project. I won. I won!
Danny wakes up, looks at himself in the mirror, and Leo's finally gotten full custody. Yup, this sure is a bad ending. It's cool they decided to go this route for a more story-focused game, splitting the good and bad endings into which of our two main characters wins the conflict, letting you play as both, even if it's non-canon and not super involved from a story or gameplay angle. It's a very nice inclusion and adds a lot. I love when games show what happens if you end up failing. It acts as such a good motivating factor, like, shit, now I've gotta get the good ending. Thankfully, you don't need to go around again. After you beat the game, whatever ending you didn't get becomes available to play in the scene select. Over in Personality Clash, instead of putting Leo in timeout and hoping it works, we decide to confront him directly while also trying to put the memory of Danny's wife to rest. The first step in our journey is giving Leo a taste of his own medicine by executing him with the syringe. I got it immediately on my first playthrough, but for some reason on my second I stumbled around for a bit before deciding surely fist-fighting him is the way to go. From there it's a dungeon crawl, avoiding the project while Leo taunts us about killing all these people, and it's like, yeah, but in my defense, you really liked when I did that. This portion was a bit tricky for me since you don't have room to easily get behind them, so I ended up luring them outside, and I guess after too many deaths, one of them got way into the script and blew right past me. When you appear back outside, you've got a triple threat to deal with. More of the project's watchdogs are out and about, but now you've got to deal with the memories of Pikmin and Michael trying to get their get back. I was mainly having problems with Pikmin and his tranquilizer gun making me outmaneuver enemies while being attacked by colors, but what I want to talk about is the hell I went through in the part after this. I'm not sure why, but on PC I died a ton of times here. Now to be fair, some of those were because I kept trying to use the flare gun. Can you blame me for wanting to see the death animations for it? It's only available in one level prior to this, and I love setting people on fire. Once I decided to lock in though, I was still getting ran down by people to the point that I was using the most scuffed strategies imaginable, and no matter what I tried, it somehow always led back to me trying to climb out of this hole like I was drowning and trying to get out of water. At least spending so much time here lets me appreciate the utter hell that is this stage's music. This is for the good ending, and before you ask, Release Therapy is in a similar boat, so I guess Danny's mind just sounds like Silent Hill. Yeah, now's as good a time as any. You might have noticed I've gone this whole way without mentioning music at all, and that's cause it's alright. Manhunt 2 goes for a different feel from the first game, leaning more towards being atmospheric, desolate, and horror-esque. Especially in the beginning with Awakening and Ghost, search themes are bleak and chase themes are droning and oppressive. I was talking with a friend about this game's soundtrack and he actually brought up a really good point that the lower energy and greater tension of the tracks in the opening stages could be alluding to Danny being off his medication, which is why the songs pick up the pace following that, which I like to think was intentional. There are some songs in this game I really like. Red Light, Best Friends, Broadcast Interrupting, and Sexual Deviance are some of the standouts, with the best track in the game easily being for Domestic Disturbance, but the rest range from good to fine. I feel like the focus on being atmospheric and instilling dread while working well during gameplay outside of it, a lot of tracks are pretty unmemorable, and didn't stick with me like those in the first game did. It's lacking a lot of the musical identity that allowed Manhunt to stand above the crowd. Manhunt's soundtrack had this electricity that permeated throughout the entire game. It made being in hiding feel intense and chases feel heart-pounding in a way that the second game doesn't really achieve. I'd actually argue in some ways it'd be more fitting if the soundtracks were swapped. One's more energetic and faster-paced focus would suit 2's more action-y feeling story, while 2's more haunting songs would fit 1's more hopeless atmosphere. I think I mainly felt disappointed by the soundtrack during the end of the game. The scarier vibe for the music fits release therapy since it is the bad ending stage after all. But for personality clash, I would have liked if it did lean into being faster paced, putting more of a focus back on those synths that made Manhunt's OST so powerful, emphasizing Danny's fight to regain control in his life. With the music we have now, it harkens back to the feeling Awakening was putting forth at the start, where Danny was scared and confused when the story communicates the direct opposite. This is Danny at his strongest, with him being confident enough in who he is to finally stand up to Leo. That was a whole big side tangent, but I was sad I wasn't able to get the same level of enjoyment out of Manhunt 2's soundtrack after thoroughly enjoying my time with the first games. The stage ends with Danny being attacked by Leo's army of clones while having him move his wife's body into her grave. And hey, remember the body moving mechanic? Notice how I haven't mentioned it since it was introduced? Yeah. Probably a good thing they forgot about it, cause this is as fun as moving guests around. On the bright side, to make up for the stage ending on a low note, we get a final cutscene that allows Danny to vent out his frustrations a bit that I really like.
You think it's that easy to get rid of me? I made you. I could be you, but I have a choice. A choice! And I choose to be me! Who the fuck wants to be Daniel Lamb? I do! You hear me? You see? You can't get rid of me. Can never get rid of me.
My name is Daniel Lamb.
My name is Daniel Lamb!
My name is... I don't know my name.
Danny wakes up in the middle of the road, once again with amnesia. He's been left with a folder containing a new identity for himself under David Joyner. Now with a clear head and no demons to hold him back, he heads on into the future to live a new, better life, thus closing out Manhunt 2. After getting to the end of the line, the main thing on my mind was, why is this game so divisive? Cause I still can't really see it. Sure, I can definitely see why people would prefer the first game. I mean, I prefer the first game, but it is a more than worthy sequel that finds ways to meaningfully expand on the foundation of the original. Both Manhunts have strengths and weaknesses in different areas, which makes them complement each other in my mind. Even though I've definitely gone over some parts of this game that could have been done better, mainly relating to how the gunplay was used, I think it's impressive how most of the game's worst features simply didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, rather than detracting from the whole experience. I think the best way of showing how much I enjoyed my time through Manhunt 2 is that I did 2 playthroughs for this video back to back, and I wasn't bored or waiting for it to be over even by the end of my second run. If I said Manhunt was a game deserving of a chance, I think that goes doubly for Manhunt 2. I was definitely apprehensive when starting this game given what I heard of it and how much I liked the first game, but I've definitely gained a similar appreciation for it as I have for the original. Pick the game up, keep an open mind, and meet the game on its own level. It may not directly follow off the first, but it definitely understands why it worked. And I promise you, if you like the first game, there's a lot to love about the second just the same. Now for the thing on everyone's mind. Will Manhunt ever come back? In terms of straight logistics, there's no way to know for sure. I definitely don't agree with people saying that it wouldn't happen because people are too sensitive or woke, I guess, or whatever buzzword people feel like using. Games have only gotten more violent. There's an argument to be made that gratuitous violence beyond what Manhunt did originally has been normalized in modern games, coupled with the fact that the moral panic surrounding violent video games has all but died off nowadays. I don't think a return to Manhunt would be as controversial as the games originally were. Now, the real reason I don't think it will come back is just because Rockstar doesn't care. Rockstar rarely, if ever, acknowledges Manhunt. I was shocked to see they had a merch drop on their store that included a Manhunt shirt, which... yeah, I'm not that desperate. I'm not sure if the cloud of the series' controversy still lingers over it for Rockstar, or if interest in the series just isn't there for the company. Manhunt generally feels like the black sheep out of Rockstar's franchises, which can easily be seen by Manhunt 1 still being broken on Steam, and Manhunt 2 not even having a Steam release. The most recent development in this series was the original being added to the Xbox One's backwards compatibility in 2021. If Manhunt miraculously did come back, I would like if both games were given ports to modern platforms. It'd be more convenient, allow for resolution and frame rate boosts, and introduce the series to a new player base. Some have thrown around the idea of a remake of the first game, which I'm not super down for, honestly. Apart from me generally being apprehensive given Rockstar's last attempt at remaking their games, I feel like the aesthetic of Manhunt is so specific and important to its gripping visual design, and that aesthetic is very tied to the PS2 era. I discussed this when I talked about Butcher's Creek, which, shameless self-promotion, but if you like Manhunt, you should go watch that as well. So many of its environments worked because of the presentation. Increasing the graphical fidelity takes away from what makes it so appealing, which I think applies to both Manhunts as well, and I don't see Rockstar committing to that artistic direction. A lot of the games that go all in on the PlayStation 1 and 2 visuals that I think Manhunt would benefit from are coming out of indie studios, so I don't see that happening unless Rockstar hands off Manhunt to an indie developer on some Sonic Mania, Bubsy 4D type shit, but now I'm just writing borderline fanfiction. Instead of a remake, if they were going to make something new, I just prefer a Manhunt 3. At least then, no matter how it turns out, I get some sort of new material to look at. And if that did come out, I guarantee I'd be there day one and then be there with a video by month 4 following several delays. This video was supposed to be out by Halloween. Even if nothing else comes of this series though, I am very happy to have found a new love in the Manhunt series. Before I played the first game, I knew next to nothing about either of these, and now they hold a very special place in my heart. Manhunt was truly something special, a lightning in a bottle series that has rarely been imitated and even less so been replicated. It's risen to be one of my favorite video game duologies, and no matter what comes of it, I hope to one day see it again.